My name is Hattie Robinson, and I'm 67 years old. Last Sunday, my daughter Ruthie stood up in front of our entire church congregation during service and publicly accused me of being a thief, a liar, and an unfit mother. She did it during testimony time, that part of the service where members can stand and share their struggles, their praises, their needs for prayer. Ruthie stood up, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking with emotion, and said, "I need prayer for my mother, Hattie Robinson. She's sitting right there in the third row. She stole $30,000 from me and my siblings, money our father left us in his will. She took it and spent it on herself while lying to us about where it went. She's a thief and a liar, and she refuses to admit what she's done. Please pray that God convicts her heart and makes her confess and return our money." The entire congregation, over 200 people, turned to stare at me. I sat frozen in my pew, my face burning with humiliation, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to defend myself. Pastor Curtis Green tried to intervene. "Sister Ruthie, this is not the appropriate time or place for family disputes." "It's not a dispute, Pastor," Ruthie interrupted, her voice rising. "It's theft. My mother stole from us. And she's been coming to this church for 40 years, sitting in that pew pretending to be a faithful Christian while lying to her own children. The congregation deserves to know what kind of person she really is." I wanted to stand up. I wanted to shout that I hadn't stolen anything, that every penny of their father's estate had been spent on legitimate expenses, that Ruthie was lying. But I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just sat there while my daughter destroyed my reputation in front of everyone I'd worshipped with for 4 decades. After the service, people avoided me. Some gave me pitying looks. Others whispered as I walked past. A few longtime friends approached and asked quietly, "Hattie, is it true? Did you take your children's inheritance?" I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. I just shook my head and fled to my car, crying so hard I could barely see to drive home. That was Sunday. The next day, Monday, I sat in a courtroom, my hand on a Bible, and testified under oath about what really happened to my late husband's estate. And what I revealed under oath destroyed my daughter's lies and exposed a conspiracy that shocked everyone who heard it. But to understand why my daughter would publicly humiliate me at church with false accusations of theft, I need to take you back to the beginning. I married Vernon Robinson in 1980 when I was 22 and he was 24. Vernon worked as a postal worker. I worked as a bank teller. Together, we built a modest but comfortable life. We had 3 children. Ruthie, born 1982, now 43. Porter, born 1985, now 40. And Letty, born 1988, now 37. We weren't wealthy, but we were stable. We owned a small house. We saved for retirement. We put money aside for emergencies. We lived within our means and planned for the future. Vernon and I were active in our church, Greater Faith Baptist Church. We attended every Sunday. Vernon served as a deacon. I sang in the choir. We tithed faithfully. We volunteered for church events. Our faith and our church community were the center of our lives. We raised our children in the church too. Sunday school every week, youth group, church camps. We wanted them to have a strong faith foundation. For 40 years, Vernon and I built a life together. A life of faith, family, and financial responsibility. Then, 2 years ago, Vernon died of cancer. Vernon was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at age 65. The doctors gave him 6 to 12 months. "We'll fight this together," I told Vernon when we received the diagnosis. "I know we will," Vernon said, squeezing my hand. "But Hattie, we need to talk about practical things. We need to update our will. We need to make sure you and the kids are taken care of if I don't beat this." So we met with an estate attorney and updated our will. The will was simple and straightforward. Our house, paid off, worth approximately $280,000, would go to me. Our savings and retirement accounts, approximately $85,000, would be split equally among our 3 children, roughly $28,000 each. Vernon's life insurance, $50,000, would go to me to cover funeral expenses and help with my living costs. "This is fair," Vernon said after signing the will. "The house goes to you because you need somewhere to live. The savings go to the kids because they're younger and can use it to build their futures. The life insurance helps you stay afloat after I'm gone." "It's more than fair," I agreed. "The kids will appreciate what you're leaving them." Vernon fought the cancer for 8 months. During that time, his medical care was expensive despite insurance coverage. We had co-pays, deductibles, out-of-pocket costs for medications and treatments. We spent approximately $32,000 on Vernon's medical care during those 8 months. Money that came from our savings account, the account that was supposed to be divided among our children. When Vernon died, our savings had been reduced from $85,000 to $53,000. Plus, funeral expenses came to $12,000, money I paid from the life insurance. After the funeral, I contacted our 3 children to discuss the estate. 1 week after Vernon's funeral, I gathered Ruthie, Porter, and Letty at my house to discuss their father's estate. "Your father left a will," I explained, showing them the document. "The house goes to me. His savings and retirement accounts were supposed to be split among you 3, roughly $28,000 each." "That's good," Porter said. "I could really use that money." "However," I continued, "during your father's illness, we spent $32,000 on his medical care. That money came from the savings account. So instead of $85,000 to divide among you, there's only $53,000. "Wait, what?" Ruthie said, her face hardening. "You spent our inheritance on medical bills." "I spent your father's money on keeping your father alive and comfortable as long as possible," I corrected gently. "It was his money, and we used it for his care." "So how much do we each get?" Letty asked. "Divided 3 ways, approximately $17,667 each," I said. "That's $10,000 less than we were supposed to get," Ruthie protested. "I know, and I'm sorry," I said, "but your father's medical care was expensive." "You should have been more careful with the money," Porter interrupted. "You should have found cheaper care." "Your father had cancer," I said, tears forming. "I wasn't thinking about saving money, I was thinking about keeping him alive." "Well, now we're paying the price for your poor decisions," Ruthie said bitterly. That conversation should have been a warning about what was coming. 6 months after Vernon's death, my children started questioning how I'd spent the estate money. Ruthie called one evening. "Mom, I've been going through Dad's financial records. Something doesn't add up." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You said you spent $32,000 on Dad's medical care," Ruthie said. "But when I look at the insurance statements, it only shows about $25,000 in out-of-pocket costs. Where's the other $7,000? "There were other expenses beyond what shows on insurance statements," I explained. "Medications not covered by insurance, medical equipment, transportation to appointments." "Do you have receipts?" Ruthie interrupted. "Some," I said. "Your father was dying, Ruthie. I wasn't thinking about keeping perfect records of every expense." "So you can't prove where the money went," Ruthie said accusingly. "I can show you most of it," I said defensively. "But not every dollar. Some things were paid in cash." "How convenient," Ruthie said. "Mom, I think you took some of our inheritance and spent it on yourself." "I did not," I protested. "Every dollar went to your father's care." "Then prove it," Ruthie challenged. "Show me receipts for every penny." "I don't have receipts for everything," I admitted. "Then we have a problem," Ruthie said coldly and hung up. 1 year after Vernon's death, all 3 of my children had turned against me, convinced I'd stolen part of their inheritance. Ruthie had done the math and decided there was a discrepancy of approximately $7,000 between what I claimed to have spent on Vernon's care and what she could verify through insurance records and the receipts I'd saved. She convinced Porter and Letty that I'd taken that $7,000 and spent it on myself. "Mom's been lying to us," Ruthie told her siblings. "She stole $7,000 from our inheritance, and she's refusing to admit it." Never mind that I was living on Social Security and Vernon's small pension. barely $2,200 per month total. Never mind that I was struggling to maintain the house and pay bills on that limited income. Never mind that I had no expensive purchases, no trips, no evidence of having spent $7,000 on myself. Ruthie had decided I was a thief, and she convinced Porter and Letty to believe it too. They confronted me together one Saturday afternoon at my house. "Mom, we know you took money that should have gone to us," Ruthie said. "We want you to pay us back." "I didn't take any money," I insisted. "All the estate money was spent legitimately." "Then where's the $7,000 you can't account for?" Porter demanded. "It was spent on your father's care," I said. "Just because I don't have a receipt for every single expense doesn't mean I stole it." "We're giving you 1 month to return the $7,000, Ruthie said. $2,333 each. "If you don't pay us back, we're filing a lawsuit." "A lawsuit," I gasped, "against your own mother." "You stole from us," Letty said, speaking up for the first time. "Why should you get to keep our father's house worth $280,000 while we only get $17,000 each? It's not fair." "The will," I started to explain. "The will was made when Dad thought there'd be $85,000 for us to share," Ruthie interrupted. "But you spent our money, so now you need to make it right. Either pay us back, or we sue you and force you to sell the house to pay us what we're owed." They left me sitting in my living room, crying and terrified. I didn't have $7,000 to give them. I was barely surviving on my fixed income. And the thought of my own children suing me, forcing me to sell the home Vernon and I had shared for 40 years, was unbearable. But I also hadn't stolen anything, and I refused to pay them money I didn't owe just to keep the peace. 18 months after Vernon's death, my relationship with my children had completely deteriorated. They'd filed a lawsuit demanding I pay them $7,000 plus interest, or sell the house and split the proceeds 4 ways. The case was scheduled for court in 1 week. My children had also started telling people at church that I'd stolen their inheritance. Not directly, just hints, whispers, prayers for me to do the right thing and confess. I'd tried talking to them, reasoning with them, showing them what documentation I had, but they refused to believe me. Ruthie had decided I was a thief, and nothing I said would change her mind. Then came last Sunday's service. I sat in my usual pew, 3rd row, right side, where Vernon and I had sat together for 40 years. I was alone now, grieving my husband, estranged from my children but still faithful to my church. During testimony time, Ruthie stood up. At first, I thought maybe she was going to share something about missing her father. We were approaching the 2-year anniversary of his death. Instead, she said, "I need prayer for my mother, Hattie Robinson. She's sitting right there in the 3rd row." My stomach dropped. "She stole $30,000 from me and my siblings," Ruthie continued, her voice breaking with false emotion. "Money our father left us in his will. She took it and spent it on herself while lying to us about where it went." I sat frozen, unable to believe what I was hearing. My own daughter was publicly accusing me of theft in front of our entire church. "She's a thief and a liar, and she refuses to admit what she's done," Ruthie said, tears streaming down her face. "Please pray that God convicts her heart and makes her confess and return our money." The congregation gasped. 200 people turned to stare at me. Pastor Curtis tried to intervene, but Ruthie kept talking. "I'm not asking for sympathy," Ruthie said. "I just want my mother to do the right thing. She's been sitting in this church for 40 years, pretending to be faithful while stealing from her own children. Everyone needs to know what kind of person she really is." I wanted to stand up and defend myself. I wanted to shout that I hadn't stolen anything. But I was too shocked, too humiliated, too devastated. I just sat there, while my daughter destroyed my reputation in front of everyone I'd worshipped with for 4 decades. After the service, I fled. I went home and cried for hours. But I also made a decision. I wasn't going to let Ruthie's lies destroy me. I wasn't going to let her false accusations stand unchallenged. The next morning, I would go to court. I would testify under oath. And I would reveal the truth, not just about the estate, but about what my children had really been planning. Because what I discovered when I hired a lawyer to defend against their lawsuit shocked even me. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe now. Hit that like button and turn on NOTIFICTONS. Drop a comment. Was Ruthie wrong to humiliate her mother at church? Did Hattie steal the money? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, Australia? Let me know. After Ruthie humiliated me at church on Sunday, I spent the rest of that day and evening in my house, crying and praying for strength. But I also did something I should have done months ago. I called the attorney I'd hired to defend me against my children's lawsuit and told her what had happened. Her name was Attorney Minnie Foster, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in estate litigation. Ms. Foster, my daughter just publicly accused me of theft in front of my entire church congregation, I said, my voice still shaking. 200 people heard her call me a thief and a liar. What can I do? What you can do is win this lawsuit, Attorney Foster said firmly. Hattie, I've been working on your case for the past 3 weeks, and I've discovered some things about your children's lawsuit that you need to know. What things? I asked. Things that suggest this lawsuit isn't really about a $7,000 discrepancy, Attorney Foster said. It's about your house. Your children want you to sell your house so they can get their hands on a share of that money. But the will specifically left the house to me, I protested. I know, Attorney Foster said, but your children are trying to find a way around that. They're claiming you mismanaged the estate, hoping a judge will force you to compensate them, possibly by selling the house. Can they do that? I asked, horrified. Not if we can prove you didn't mismanage anything, Attorney Foster said. Which is why I've spent the past 3 weeks gathering every piece of documentation about your husband's final expenses. And Hattie, I found something important. What? I asked. Evidence that your children know exactly where all the money went, Attorney Foster said. And they're lying about the discrepancy to create a legal claim against you. Over the next hour, Attorney Foster explained what she'd uncovered while preparing my defense. I subpoenaed Vernon's medical records, insurance claims, and payment records from the hospital and various providers, Attorney Foster explained. I was able to account for almost every dollar of the $32,000 you spent on his care. Almost, I asked nervously. There's about $4,000 in cash expenses I can't directly prove. Things like over-the-counter medications, medical supplies from the pharmacy, transportation costs to appointments, Attorney Foster said. But those are legitimate, expected expenses for someone undergoing cancer treatment. So where does Ruthie get $7,000 as the discrepancy? I asked. That's what's interesting, Attorney Foster said. I looked at Ruthie's calculations. She provided them in the lawsuit filing. She's counting certain expenses twice, excluding some insurance reimbursements, and inflating the value of the estate before Vernon's illness. She's manipulating the numbers, I asked. Deliberately, Attorney Foster confirmed. She's creating a discrepancy where none exists. The real gap between what you spent and what I can document is about $4,000, not $7,000. And those $4,000 are easily explained as normal cash expenses. So I didn't steal anything, I said, relief flooding through me. You absolutely didn't steal anything, Attorney Foster confirmed. But here's the more important discovery. I also subpoenaed text messages and emails as part of discovery. And Hattie, I found communications between your 3 children that show they planned this lawsuit deliberately. What do you mean? I asked. I mean they discussed among themselves how to create a legal claim against you to force you to sell the house, Attorney Foster said. They knew you didn't steal anything, but they decided to manufacture a claim anyway. Attorney Foster showed me printed copies of text messages between Ruthie, Porter, and Letty from 8 months ago, 4 months before they filed the lawsuit. Ruthie to Porter and Letty, I've been thinking. Mom got the house worth $280K, we each got $17K, that's not fair. We should have gotten more. Porter to Ruthie, But that's what Dad's will said. House goes to Mom. Ruthie to Porter. The will was written when Dad thought we'd each get $28K, but Mom spent our money on medical bills. She should compensate us. Letty to Ruthie. How? Mom doesn't have money to compensate us. Ruthie to Letty. She has a house worth $280K if we can force her to sell it and split the proceeds 4 ways. We'd each get $70K. Porter to Ruthie. But how do we force her to sell? The will gave her the house. Ruthie to Porter. We claim she mismanaged the estate. We say she can't account for all the medical expenses. We create a discrepancy and sue her for it. If we win, the judge might order her to compensate us, and the only way she can do that is by selling the house. Letty to Ruthie. That seems harsh. Mom didn't actually steal anything. Ruthie to Letty. She spent money that should have been ours. Same thing. And if she'd been more careful with money, we wouldn't be in this position. She needs to face consequences. I stared at the text messages in shock. My children, my own children, had deliberately plotted to fabricate a legal claim against me to force me to sell my home. They knew I didn't steal anything, I whispered. They absolutely knew, Attorney Foster confirmed. This was never about recovering stolen money. This was about greed. They want a larger share of the estate, and they're willing to lie and manipulate to get it. What do? I asked. Tomorrow in court, you testify truthfully, Attorney Foster said. I'll present all the documentation proving where the money went, and then I'll present these text messages showing your children fabricated their claim. The judge will see exactly what's happening here. Will I win? I asked hopefully. Yes, Attorney Foster said confidently. And more than that, your children might face consequences for bringing a fraudulent lawsuit. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about having to face my children in court the next day, having to testify under oath about Vernon's death, his medical expenses, our finances, all while my children sat there glaring at me, convinced I was a thief. I also thought about what would happen after I won the lawsuit. Would my children ever forgive me? Would they ever admit they'd been wrong? Or would this destroy our relationship forever? Around 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was my sister, Geneva, who'd heard about the church incident through mutual friends. Hattie, I just heard what Ruthie did at church, Geneva said, her voice angry. She publicly accused you of theft, in front of the whole congregation. Yes, I said, tears forming again. She humiliated me, Geneva. Everyone was staring at me. People I've known for 40 years think I'm a thief. That girl has lost her mind, Geneva said. Hattie, you didn't steal anything. I was there during Vernon's illness. I saw how expensive his care was. I know you spent every penny on him. The kids don't believe that, I said. They think I took their inheritance and spent it on myself. Then you need to prove them wrong in court tomorrow, Geneva said firmly. You need to show the judge and everyone else that you did nothing wrong. I'm terrified, I admitted. What if the judge doesn't believe me? He will, Geneva assured me. Because you have the truth on your side, and your lawyer has evidence. The truth will win, Hattie. I hope you're right, I said. I am right, Geneva said. And Hattie, after you win tomorrow, those children need to apologize to you. What Ruthie did at church was cruel and wrong. She owes you a public apology. I don't know if she'll ever apologize, I said sadly. She's convinced she's right. Then she's going to learn a hard lesson tomorrow, Geneva said. Monday morning, I dressed in a simple navy dress and arrived at the courthouse with Attorney Foster at 8:30 a.m. for our 9 a.m. hearing. My 3 children were already there, Ruthie, Porter, and Letty, sitting with their attorney, Attorney Curtis Brooks. When Ruthie saw me, she gave me a cold, disapproving look. No greeting, no acknowledgement that I was her mother, just a look that said she thought I was a thief who'd stolen from her. It hurt more than I could express. We entered the courtroom, a small courtroom for civil cases, presided over by Judge Theodore Washington, a black man in his early 60s known for being fair but firm. The matter of Robinson, and Robinson versus Robinson, the bailiff announced. A state dispute. This is quite a family matter, Judge Washington observed, looking at the case file. 3 children suing their mother over their father's estate. Let's hope we can resolve this fairly and restore some family peace. Attorney Brooks, present your client's case. Attorney Curtis Brooks stood and gave his opening statement. Your Honor, this case is straightforward, Brooks began. The plaintiffs, Ruthie, Porter, and Letty Robinson, are the children of Vernon Robinson, who died 2 years ago. Vernon's will specified that his savings and retirement accounts, totaling approximately $85,000, would be divided equally among his 3 children. However, the defendant, the children's mother, Hattie Robinson, was the executor of the estate, Brooks continued. She claims she spent $32,000 on Vernon's medical care during his final illness, but she cannot adequately account for all that money. There's a discrepancy of approximately $7,000. The plaintiffs believe their mother took that $7,000 and spent it on herself, Brooks said. They're asking this court to order her to repay them $7,000 plus interest and to remove her as executor of any remaining estate assets. Your Honor, this is a case of an executor mismanaging estate funds, Brooks concluded. The plaintiffs are simply asking for what's rightfully theirs. Judge Washington turned to Attorney Foster. Ms. Foster, your response. Your Honor, the defendant did not mismanage anything, Foster said firmly. Every dollar of Vernon Robinson's medical expenses is accounted for and documented. There is no $7,000 discrepancy. The plaintiffs manufactured that number by manipulating their calculations. Moreover, Foster continued, we have evidence that the plaintiffs filed this lawsuit in bad faith. They knew their mother didn't steal money, but they wanted to force her to sell her home, the home Vernon's will specifically left to her, so they could get a larger share of the estate. This lawsuit is not about recovering stolen money. It's about greed. Those are serious allegations, Judge Washington said. Let's hear testimony. Attorney Brooks, call your first witness. Attorney Brooks called Ruthie to testify first. Ms. Robinson, please explain why you're suing your mother, Brooks prompted. My father left my siblings and me approximately $28,000 each, Ruthie began, her voice steady and confident. But my mother, as executor, spent a significant portion of our inheritance on medical bills. She claims she spent $32,000 on my father's care. Do you dispute that she spent money on your father's care? Brooks asked. I dispute the amount, Ruthie said. According to insurance records, my father's out-of-pocket medical costs were about $25,000. My mother claims she spent $32,000. That's a $7,000 discrepancy she can't account for. What do you believe happened to that $7,000? Brooks asked. I believe my mother spent it on herself, Ruthie said, looking directly at me with cold eyes. And I believe she's lying about it to cover up what she did. Have you asked your mother to provide documentation? Brooks asked. Multiple times, Ruthie said. She claims she doesn't have receipts for everything, which is convenient. Thank you, Brooks said. Your witness, Ms. Foster. Attorney Foster stood with a folder full of documents. Ms. Robinson, you testified that insurance records show $25,000 in out-of-pocket costs, Foster began. But those insurance records don't include cash payments, do they? I suppose not, Ruthie admitted. So there could be legitimate medical expenses your mother paid in cash that wouldn't show up on insurance records, Foster pressed. Maybe small amounts, Ruthie conceded, but not $7,000. Ms. Robinson, have you ever cared for someone with terminal cancer? Foster asked. No, Ruthie said. So you don't have personal experience with the costs involved, Foster continued. No, but, Ruthie started. During your father's illness, how often did you visit him? Foster interrupted. I visited when I could, Ruthie said defensively. I have a job and a family. How many times? Foster pressed. Once a week, once a month. Maybe once a month, Ruthie admitted. So you weren't there for most of your father's care, Foster said. You didn't see the day-to-day expenses. You didn't purchase the medications, the medical supplies, the special foods, the transportation costs. Your mother did all of that. My mother was the executor, Ruthie said. She should have kept better records. Ms. Robinson, I have here text messages between you and your siblings from 8 months ago, Foster said, pulling out the printed texts. Messages where you discussed how to create a legal claim against your mother to force her to sell her house. Would you like to read them to the court? Ruthie's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Your Honor, may I approach? Foster asked. Please do, Judge Washington said. Foster handed copies of the text messages to the judge and to Ruthie. Judge Washington read them, his expression growing stern. Ms. Robinson, did you write these text messages? Judge Washington asked. Ruthie read them, her hands shaking. Those were private conversations. Did you write them? Judge Washington repeated. Yes, Ruthie admitted quietly. So you discussed with your siblings how to manufacture a legal claim against your mother to force her to sell her house? Judge Washington asked. We were frustrated, Ruthie tried to explain. We felt like Mom got everything and we got scraps. Your mother got the house because that's what your father's will specified, Judge Washington interrupted. And now you're suing her based on a manufactured claim because you want a bigger share. Is that correct? It's not manufactured, Ruthie protested. We'll determine that, Judge Washington said coldly. Step down, Ms. Robinson. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now. Smash that like button and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Should Ruthie be punished for lying? Will Hattie win the case? Where are you watching from? After Ruthie's testimony collapsed under Attorney Foster's cross-examination, Judge Theodore Washington looked even more stern. Let's take a 15-minute recess, Judge Washington announced. When we return, I want to hear from the defendant, Mrs. Hattie Robinson. I want to understand exactly what happened to this estate. During the recess, I sat in the hallway with Attorney Foster while my 3 children huddled with their attorney across the hall. You did great exposing those text messages, I told Attorney Foster. The text messages did the work themselves, Attorney Foster said. They prove your children filed this lawsuit in bad faith. But Hattie, now you need to testify. You need to tell the judge exactly where every dollar went. Can you do that? I'll try, I said nervously. Don't try, Attorney Foster said firmly. Do it. This is your chance to tell your truth under oath, to clear your name, to show the judge and your children that you did nothing wrong. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Washington called me to the witness stand. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Then I sat in the witness box, facing my 3 children, and prepared to tell the story of Vernon's final months. Mrs. Robinson, please tell the court about your husband Vernon's final illness, Attorney Foster prompted. I took a deep breath and began. Vernon was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 2 years ago, I said, my voice shaking slightly. The doctors gave him 6 to 12 months to live. We decided to fight it with everything we had. What did his treatment involve? Attorney Foster asked. Chemotherapy, I explained. Radiation, countless doctor appointments, hospital stays, tests and scans, and eventually home hospice care for his final weeks. Was his treatment expensive? Attorney Foster asked. Very expensive, I confirmed. Even with insurance, we had co-pays, deductibles, out-of-pocket costs. Every chemotherapy session cost us about $4,000 after insurance. The radiation was $3,000 per week. The medications were hundreds of dollars each month. How did you pay for all this? Attorney Foster asked. We used our savings, I said. The savings that Vernon had planned to leave to our children. We didn't have a choice. Vernon needed care, and we had to pay for it. Did you keep receipts for all these expenses? Attorney Foster asked. I kept most of them, I said, but not all. During those 8 months, I was focused on keeping my husband alive and comfortable. I wasn't thinking about documenting every single expense for potential legal challenges later. Mrs. Robinson, did you spend any of your husband's estate money on yourself? Attorney Foster asked directly. No, I said firmly, looking at my children. Not one penny. Every dollar went to Vernon's care or legitimate estate expenses like the funeral. Attorney Foster then walked me through a detailed accounting she'd prepared, showing on a large display board for the judge and everyone to see. Vernon's estate when he was diagnosed. Savings and retirement accounts, $85,000. Home equity, $280,000 left to me by will. Life insurance, $50,000 left to me by will. Medical expenses during 8 months of treatment. Chemotherapy copays, $16,000, $4 sessions times $4,000 each. Radiation copays, $9,000, $3 weeks times $3,000 per week. Hospital stays, $4,000, $2 hospitalizations. Medications not covered by insurance, $2,400, $300 month times 8 months. Medical equipment, $1,200, hospital bed, oxygen walker. Over-the-counter medications and supplies, $800 estimated. Transportation to appointments, $600, gas, parking, 1 ambulance ride. Special nutritional supplements, $400. Home modifications for accessibility, $300. Total documented medical expenses, $34,700. Funeral expenses. Funeral home services, $8,000. Burial plot, $2,500. Headstone, $1,500. Total funeral expenses, $12,000. Your Honor, as you can see, the medical expenses alone totaled approximately $34,700, Attorney Foster explained. Mrs. Robinson initially estimated $32,000, which was close but slightly understated. She actually spent more than she claimed, not less. Wait, Judge Washington interrupted. The plaintiffs are claiming she spent $7,000 less than she should have, but this accounting shows she spent more. Exactly, Your Honor, Attorney Foster confirmed. The alleged discrepancy doesn't exist. Mrs. Robinson spent every penny on her husband's care and then some. I saw Ruthie, Porter, and Letty exchange nervous glances. Mrs. Robinson, where did the additional money for the funeral come from? Judge Washington asked. The life insurance policy, I explained. Vernon left me $50,000 in life insurance. I used $12,000 for the funeral, and I've been using the rest to supplement my Social Security and his pension to pay my living expenses. So the children received their full share of the savings minus the legitimate medical expenses, Judge Washington clarified. Yes, Your Honor, I confirmed. They each received approximately $17,600, every penny I could preserve from the savings after paying for Vernon's care. Mrs. Robinson, how do you feel about your children's accusations? Attorney Foster asked gently. I looked at Ruthie, Porter, and Letty sitting at the plaintiff's table. Ruthie refused to meet my eyes. Porter looked uncomfortable. Letty was crying quietly. Devastated, I said, my own tears starting to flow. I spent 8 months watching my husband die. I held his hand through every chemotherapy session. I cleaned him when he couldn't do it himself. I sat with him through sleepless nights when the pain was unbearable. I spent every dollar we had trying to give him more time, better quality of life, less suffering. And then, after he died, after I buried him and was trying to grieve and figure out how to live without him, my own children accused me of stealing from them. I continued, my voice breaking. They looked at the money I spent keeping their father alive and saw theft instead of love. Mrs. Robinson, Ruthie started to interrupt. You'll have your chance to respond, Judge Washington said sharply. Let your mother finish. Yesterday, my daughter stood up in our church, the church where we've worshipped for 40 years, and told 200 people I was a thief and a liar, I said, looking directly at Ruthie now. She humiliated me in front of everyone I know. She destroyed my reputation. She turned people against me, all because she wanted more money than her father's will left her. I didn't steal anything, I said firmly. I loved my husband. I cared for him. I spent his money, our money, exactly as he would have wanted on his care, and I won't apologize for that. I sat back, emotionally exhausted. The courtroom was silent. After a moment, Attorney Brooks called Porter to testify, hoping to salvage something from their case. Mr. Robinson, do you still believe your mother mismanaged your father's estate? Brooks asked. Porter looked at me, then at the accounting on the display board, then back at Attorney Brooks. I don't know, Porter said honestly. Seeing all the expenses laid out like that, it's a lot more than I realized. But you did believe there was a discrepancy, Brooks pressed. Ruthie said there was, Porter said. She did all the math. I trusted her calculations. Mr. Robinson, did you review the calculations yourself? Attorney Foster asked during cross-examination. No, Porter admitted. I'm not good with numbers. Ruthie handles all the financial stuff. So you sued your mother based entirely on your sister's word, without verifying the numbers yourself? Attorney Foster pressed. Yes, Porter admitted. I trusted Ruthie. Mr. Robinson, do you now believe your mother stole money from you? Attorney Foster asked directly. Porter looked at me, his expression filled with doubt and confusion. I don't know what to believe anymore. Attorney Brooks then called Letty, who was visibly upset. Ms. Robinson, why did you join this lawsuit? Brooks asked. Because Ruthie said Mom took our money, Letty said, tears streaming down her face. And I needed that money. I have credit card debt. I thought if Mom had taken some of our inheritance, she should give it back. Do you still believe your mother took money? Brooks asked. Letty looked at the accounting board, then at me, then started crying harder. I don't know, Letty sobbed. I see all those medical expenses, and I remember how sick Daddy was. Maybe Mom really did spend it all on him. Ms. Robinson, did you verify your sister Ruthie's calculations before filing this lawsuit? Attorney Foster asked during cross-examination. No, Letty admitted. I just believed her. She's always been good with money and numbers. Did you know about the text messages where Ruthie discussed manufacturing a claim to force your mother to sell her house? Attorney Foster asked. I saw those texts, Letty admitted. I told Ruthie it seemed wrong, but she said Mom needed to face consequences for mismanaging the estate. And you went along with it, Attorney Foster pressed. I'm sorry, Letty said, looking at me. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. Ruthie was so convinced you'd stolen from us and I needed the money and I'm sorry. After the testimony concluded, Attorney Foster presented her evidence systematically. Exhibit A. Complete medical records and bills, every itemized bill from Vernon's treatment, matching the accounting she'd shown earlier. Exhibit B. Insurance statements showing what insurance covered and what Vernon and I paid out of pocket. Exhibit C. Bank statements showing our savings declining from $85,000 to $53,000 over 8 months as we paid medical bills. Exhibit D. Funeral expenses itemized bills totaling $12,000. Exhibit E. Text messages the smoking gun, Ruthie's texts to her siblings discussing how to manufacture a claim to force me to sell the house. Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming, Attorney Foster concluded. Mrs. Robinson did not mismanage the estate. She did not steal anything. Every dollar is accounted for. The plaintiffs knew this. The text messages prove they knew their mother hadn't stolen anything. But they filed this lawsuit anyway because they wanted a larger share of the estate than the will provided. This is not a legitimate lawsuit, Attorney Foster said. This is a bad faith attempt to circumvent a valid will, and it has caused Mrs. Robinson tremendous harm, financially, emotionally, and socially. She deserves not just to win this case, but to be compensated for what she's endured. Attorney Brooks tried one last time to save his client's case. Your Honor, my clients may have been mistaken about some of the calculations, Brooks conceded. But they genuinely believed their mother had mismanaged the estate. That's not bad faith. That's a good faith dispute about accounting. The text messages were just family members venting their frustrations, Brooks continued. They don't prove fraud or bad faith. They prove my clients were upset about receiving less inheritance than they expected. Your Honor, I ask that you at least consider whether Mrs. Robinson could have been more careful in her record-keeping, Brooks concluded. Even if she didn't intentionally mismanage funds, perhaps she was negligent in her duties as executor. It was a weak argument, and Brooks knew it. Judge Washington took only 10 minutes to review his notes before announcing his decision. I've heard testimony from all parties and reviewed the evidence, Judge Washington began. And I can say without hesitation that this is one of the most disappointing cases I've encountered in my 23 years on the bench. Mrs. Hattie Robinson did nothing wrong, Judge Washington said firmly. She spent 8 months caring for her dying husband. She spent approximately $35,000 on his medical care, every dollar of which is documented and legitimate. She spent $12,000 on his funeral, again, fully documented. She preserved approximately $53,000 from the estate, which she divided among her 3 children as the will required, Judge Washington continued. She kept nothing for herself from that money. She has been living on Social Security, her late husband's pension, and the life insurance money that was specifically left to her. The plaintiff's claim of a $7,000 discrepancy is false, Judge Washington stated. It's based on manipulated calculations designed to create the appearance of mismanagement where none exists. Ruthie started to protest, but Judge Washington silenced her with a look. More troubling are the text messages, Judge Washington said. These messages prove the plaintiffs knew their mother hadn't stolen anything. But they filed this lawsuit anyway, not to recover stolen funds, but to force Mrs. Robinson to sell her home so they could get a larger share of the estate than their father's will provided. That is fraud on this court, Judge Washington said sternly. The plaintiffs filed a lawsuit they knew was baseless, caused their mother tremendous financial and emotional harm, and wasted court resources, all out of greed. The plaintiff's lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice, Judge Washington announced, meaning they cannot refile. Mrs. Robinson is found to have properly managed the estate and owes nothing to her children. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now, smash that like button, and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Should the children face consequences for fraud? Will they apologize to Hattie? Where are you watching from? After Judge Washington dismissed my children's lawsuit with prejudice, he wasn't finished. Furthermore, Judge Washington continued, his voice stern, I'm ordering the plaintiffs, Ruthie, Porter, and Letty Robinson, to pay Mrs. Hattie Robinson's legal fees. Attorney Foster, please submit your fee statement to the court. Your Honor, my fees for this case total approximately $6,500, Attorney Foster said. The plaintiffs will split that cost equally, Judge Washington ordered. Approximately $2,167 each, payable within 90 days. Ruthie's face went white. Porter looked sick. Letty was still crying. But Your Honor, Ruthie protested, we don't have that kind of money. You filed a baseless lawsuit against your own mother, Judge Washington interrupted harshly. You caused her to incur legal expenses defending herself against false accusations. You'll pay those expenses. Additionally, Judge Washington continued, I'm sanctioning the plaintiffs $1,500 each for filing a frivolous lawsuit. That's $4,500 total, also payable to Mrs. Robinson within 90 days. Your Honor, that's over $8,600 we have to pay our mother, Porter exclaimed. That's $8,600 you'll pay your mother for putting her through this nightmare, Judge Washington corrected. Be grateful I'm not referring you to the state bar for investigation of fraud. Consider this a warning. Do not abuse the court system again. Mrs. Robinson, Hattie Robinson, you're free to go, Judge Washington said, looking at me with sympathy. I'm sorry you had to endure this. You did nothing wrong. Your late husband would be proud of how you cared for him. The gavel came down. My children had lost completely. Not only had their lawsuit been dismissed, but now they owed me over $8,600 combined, plus they had their own attorney's fees to pay. And more importantly, the truth was now public record. They'd filed a false lawsuit against their own mother out of greed. As we left the courtroom, my 3 children stood in the hallway looking shell-shocked. Letty approached me first, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Letty sobbed. "I never should have gone along with this. Ruthie convinced us you'd stolen from us and I believed her, but seeing all the evidence today, I was wrong. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at my youngest daughter, 37 years old, crying like a child who'd been caught doing something wrong. "Letty, you accused me of theft," I said quietly. "You sued me. You tried to force me to sell my home. That's not something I can just forgive and forget." "I know," Letty said, "but I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. I was wrong." Porter approached next, looking ashamed. "Mom, I should have verified Ruthie's numbers before agreeing to sue you," Porter said. "I'm sorry I didn't. I'm sorry I doubted you." "You should have trusted me," I said, hurt evident in my voice. "I'm your mother. I raised you. I've never lied to you. But the moment Ruthie told you I was a thief, you believed her instead of me." "I know," Porter said, hanging his head. "I was wrong." Ruthie stood apart from her siblings, her arms crossed, her face hard. "Ruthie," I said, looking at my oldest daughter, "do you have anything to say?" Ruthie met my eyes with defiance. "The judge may have ruled against us, but I still think you mismanaged Dad's estate. I think you should have been more careful with the money. I think you owe us an apology." I stared at my daughter in disbelief. Even after everything, the evidence, the testimony, the judge's ruling, she still couldn't admit she was wrong. "An apology?" I repeated. "Ruthie, you just lost a lawsuit where a judge ruled you filed false claims. You owe me over $8,600. You humiliated me at church in front of 200 people. And you think I owe you an apology?" "You spent our inheritance," Ruthie started. "I spent your father's money on your father's care," I interrupted firmly. "Money that was his to spend on his own medical treatment. You're not entitled to inherit a specific amount, Ruthie. You're entitled to inherit whatever is left after legitimate expenses. And that's exactly what you got." "I don't accept that," Ruthie said stubbornly. "You don't have to accept it," I said. "But it's the truth, and it's now the official ruling of the court. You filed a false lawsuit, Ruthie. You lied. You manipulated your siblings. You damaged my reputation. And you haven't even apologized." "I'm not going to apologize for wanting what's fair," Ruthie said. "Then we have nothing more to say to each other," I said sadly. I turned and walked away with Attorney Foster, leaving my 3 children standing in the courthouse hallway. The Sunday after the court hearing, I debated whether to return to Greater Faith Baptist Church. After what Ruthie had done, publicly accusing me of theft in front of the entire congregation, I wasn't sure I could face those people again. But my sister, Geneva, convinced me to go. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," Geneva said. "You won in court. The judge said you did nothing wrong. If anyone should be too ashamed to show their face at church, it's Ruthie, not you." So Sunday morning, I dressed in my best dress and drove to church. I walked in with my head held high and sat in my usual pew, 3rd row, right side, where Vernon and I had sat for 40 years. People stared, some whispered, but several longtime friends approached me before service. "Hattie, we heard about the court case," my friend Opal Davis said. "We heard the judge ruled you didn't do anything wrong. We're so sorry for doubting you." "Thank you," I said, tears forming. "Ruthie shouldn't have said what she said during testimony time," another friend, Geneva Turner, added. "That was wrong. We should have waited to hear your side before judging you." "I appreciate that," I said. When Pastor Curtis Green saw me, he approached immediately. "Sister Hattie," Pastor Curtis said, "I want to apologize for what happened during service last week. Ruthie should never have been allowed to use testimony time to make those accusations. I should have stopped it sooner." "It's not your fault." "Pastor," I said, "you tried to intervene." "I want to make this right," Pastor Curtis said. Would you be willing to address the congregation during testimony time today to share what really happened? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hide, to avoid more attention, to let the whole situation fade away. But another part of me, the part that had found strength to testify in court, knew I needed to tell my truth. Yes, I said, I'll speak. During testimony time, Pastor Curtis called me forward. Sister Hattie Robinson would like to address the congregation, Pastor Curtis announced. I walked to the front of the church, my heart pounding, and faced the 200 people who'd heard Ruthie call me a thief the week before. Last Sunday, my daughter Ruthie stood here and accused me of stealing $30,000 from her and her siblings. I began, my voice shaking but growing stronger. She called me a thief and a liar in front of all of you. Many of you probably believed her. I don't blame you. She's convincing when she wants to be. But I want you to know the truth, I continued. This past Monday, I testified under oath in court about what happened to my late husband Vernon's estate. The judge reviewed all the evidence, every medical bill, every receipt, every bank statement, and he ruled that I did nothing wrong. I didn't steal anything, I said firmly. I spent every penny of Vernon's money on his medical care during his final 8 months of life. Chemotherapy, radiation, hospital stays, medications, equipment, everything he needed to fight his cancer and to die with dignity when the fight was over. My children expected to inherit more money than they received, I explained. And instead of accepting that medical expenses reduced their inheritance, they accused me of theft. They filed a lawsuit against me. They tried to force me to sell my home, the home Vernon left me in his will. But the judge saw through their false claims, I said. He dismissed their lawsuit. He ordered them to pay my legal fees, and he sanctioned them for filing a frivolous case. I'm telling you this not to shame my children, though what they did was shameful, I said. I'm telling you because when someone accuses you of something terrible in public, you deserve the chance to defend yourself in public too. I loved my husband, I concluded, tears flowing freely now. I cared for him during the hardest 8 months of our 45-year marriage, and I will not apologize for spending his money to give him the best care possible. That money was well spent on love, on comfort, on more time together, and I'd spend it all again if it meant one more day with Vernon. I returned to my seat in silence. Then, slowly, people began to clap. One person, then another, then the whole congregation was applauding, not for me winning a lawsuit, but for my faithfulness to Vernon and for speaking truth. After service, dozens of people approached to apologize for doubting me, to express support, to say they'd been wrong to judge me based on Ruthie's accusations. It felt like vindication, not just legal vindication, but spiritual and social vindication too. 3 months after the court ruling, I received 3 checks in the mail. From Letty, $2,833.33, her share of my legal fees plus sanctions. From Porter, $2,833.33, his share of my legal fees plus sanctions. From Ruthie, $2,833.34, her share of my legal fees plus sanctions. Total, $8,500. Each check came with a note. Letty's note, Mom, I'm so sorry for everything. I hope someday you can forgive me. I love you. Please call me when you're ready to talk. Porter's note, Mom, I made a terrible mistake believing Ruthie instead of trusting you. I'm sorry. I'd like to rebuild our relationship if you're willing. Ruthie's note, this payment satisfies the court's order. I've paid what I was required to pay. Don't expect any further contact from me. Even in defeat, even after being proven wrong, Ruthie couldn't bring herself to apologize. I deposited the checks and used the money to pay off some bills and to make a donation to the church building fund in Vernon's memory. Then I called Letty and Porter and told them I was willing to start rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, with clear boundaries. But I didn't call Ruthie, and she didn't call me. 6 months after the humiliation at church and the court testimony, my relationship with Letty and Porter had improved significantly. Letty visited every week. She apologized repeatedly for doubting me, for suing me, for not verifying Ruthie's calculations before joining the lawsuit. I was desperate for money, Letty explained during one visit. I had credit card debt. I thought if you'd taken some of our inheritance, you should give it back. But I never stopped to consider whether Ruthie's accusations were actually true. You should have trusted me, I said. I know, Letty agreed. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving I've learned from that mistake. Porter also visited regularly. He helped with household repairs, took me to doctor appointments, tried to show through actions that he'd changed. I let Ruthie do my thinking for me, Porter admitted. She's always been the smart one, the one who handles finances. When she said you'd stolen from us, I just believed her. I should have investigated for myself. Yes, you should have, I agreed. Can you forgive me? Porter asked. I'm working on it, I said honestly. Forgiveness doesn't happen overnight after what you put me through, but I'm trying. As for Ruthie, I heard through the family grapevine that she was struggling. The lawsuit had cost her over $5,000 in legal fees, her share of their attorney's costs plus what she owed me. Her reputation at church was damaged. People knew she'd falsely accused her mother and lost in court. And her relationships with Porter and Letty were strained because they blamed her for convincing them to join the lawsuit. Ruthie had isolated herself, refusing to admit she'd been wrong, refusing to apologize, convinced she was the victim in this situation. I felt sorry for her, but I also knew I couldn't force reconciliation. Ruthie had to decide for herself whether her pride was worth losing her mother over. 1 year after Ruthie humiliated me at church, I was 68 years old and finally at peace. I'd survived my daughter's public accusations. I'd testified under oath and proven my innocence. I'd been vindicated by a judge, compensated for my legal fees, and supported by my church community. I'd rebuilt relationships with 2 of my 3 children, though those relationships would never be the same as before. There was wariness now, boundaries, a recognition that they'd proven themselves capable of turning against me when it served their interests. But I'd also learned something important. I was stronger than I'd realized. Strong enough to stand up in court and tell my truth. Strong enough to face my church congregation after being humiliated. Strong enough to set boundaries with my own children. Vernon had left me the house in his will because he wanted me to have security and stability after he was gone. My children had tried to take that away from me out of greed, but they'd failed. I still lived in my house, the house where Vernon and I had raised our children, the house full of 45 years of memories. It was mine, legally and permanently. No one could take it from me. As for Ruthie, I prayed for her regularly. I prayed she'd find peace. I prayed she'd learn to let go of her anger and resentment. I prayed that someday she'd realize what she'd lost by choosing pride over family. But I didn't wait for her. I didn't put my life on hold hoping she'd apologize. I moved forward with my healing, my relationships with Letty and Porter, my church community, my life. One Sunday morning, exactly 1 year after the humiliation, something unexpected happened at church. I was sitting in my usual pew when Ruthie walked in. I hadn't seen her at church in months. She'd apparently been attending a different church to avoid facing the congregation who knew what she'd done. But this Sunday, she returned to Greater Faith Baptist. And during testimony time, she stood up. My heart started pounding. Was she going to accuse me of something else? Was this nightmare starting over? I want to apologize, Ruthie said, her voice barely above a whisper. The congregation fell silent. 1 year ago, I stood in the same spot and accused my mother of theft, Ruthie continued. I said terrible things about her in front of all of you. I damaged her reputation. I hurt her deeply. I was wrong, Ruthie said, tears streaming down her face now. My mother didn't steal anything. She spent every penny of my father's money on his medical care, just like she said. The judge confirmed that. The evidence proved it. I knew it was true, but I didn't want to admit I was wrong. I spent this past year angry at my mother for winning the lawsuit, angry at the court for ruling against me, angry at everyone except myself, Ruthie admitted. But I've been going to counseling, and my counselor helped me see that I wasn't really angry about money. I was angry about grief. My father died 2 years ago, Ruthie explained. I miss him every day, and when I saw how much of his estate was spent on medical bills, I felt like the money was gone and he was gone, and I had nothing left of him. So I blamed my mother for spending the money that could have been my piece of Dad. But that was wrong, Ruthie said. Mom spent that money giving Dad more time, less pain, better care. She spent it out of love, and I should have been grateful, not angry. Mom, Ruthie said, looking directly at me now, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for accusing you of theft. I'm sorry for humiliating you in front of the church. I'm sorry for suing you. I'm sorry for refusing to apologize when you gave me chances. I was wrong about everything. Can you ever forgive me? The congregation waited in silence for my response. I stood up slowly, walked down the aisle, and faced my oldest daughter. Ruthie, you put me through hell this past year, I said quietly. You called me a thief. You sued me. You tried to take my home. You damaged my reputation. You turned your siblings against me, and you refused to apologize even after a judge ruled you were wrong. I know, Ruthie said, crying, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But you're my daughter, I continued, and I've been praying for this moment for a year, so yes, Ruthie, I forgive you. I opened my arms, and Ruthie fell into them, sobbing. The congregation erupted in applause, not polite church applause, but genuine celebration of reconciliation and forgiveness. I'm 68 years old now, 2 years after Vernon's death, 1 year after my daughter humiliated me at church, and the day after I testified under oath to clear my name. Ruthie humiliated me at church, calling me a thief in front of 200 people. The next day, I testified under oath in court, presented evidence proving I'd spent every penny on Vernon's medical care, and watched a judge destroy my children's false lawsuit. My children tried to take my home out of greed. They failed. The court protected me. Truth prevailed. And now, 1 year later, I have peace. I've forgiven my children, even Ruthie, who took the longest to apologize. I've rebuilt my relationships with all 3 of them, though those relationships are different now, marked by what happened. I still attend Greater Faith Baptist Church every Sunday. I still sit in the 3rd row, right side, Vernon's and my pew. But now people know my story, not the false story Ruthie told, but the true story the court confirmed. I'm a woman who spent 8 months caring for her dying husband, who spent every penny she had to give him more time and less pain, who was falsely accused by her own children, who stood up in court and told the truth under oath, and who won. Vernon would be proud of how I fought for truth and justice. He'd be proud of how I eventually found the grace to forgive our daughter. And he'd be proud that I'm still here, in our house, living the life he wanted me to have after he was gone. My daughter humiliated me at church, trying to destroy my reputation with lies. The next day, I testified under oath and destroyed her lies with truth. Truth won, justice prevailed, and I'm finally at peace. 1 year after court victory, Hattie found peace. Judge Washington ordered kids to pay $6,500 legal fees, $2,167 each, plus $1,500 sanctions, each equals $8,600 total. Porter and Letty apologized immediately. Mom, we were wrong. But Ruthie defiant. I still think you mismanaged estate. You owe U.S. apology. Hattie shocked. You lost lawsuit, owe me $8,600, humiliated me publicly, and you want me to apologize. Ruthie, I'm not apologizing for wanting what's fair. 1 week later, Hattie returned to church, spoke during testimony time. Last week, Ruthie called me thief. Monday, I testified under oath. Judge reviewed all evidence and ruled I did nothing wrong. I loved Vernon, spent every penny on his care. I will not apologize for giving my husband the best possible treatment. Congregation gave standing ovation. 3 months later, received $8,500 in payments, Letty's note. So sorry, please forgive me. Porter's note. I was wrong trusting Ruthie instead of you. Ruthie's note. This satisfies court order. Don't expect further contact. No apology. 6 months later, Letty and Porter visiting regularly, rebuilding relationships slowly. Both deeply apologetic, trying to prove they've changed. Ruthie isolated herself, struggling financially, $5K legal fees. Reputation damaged at church, strained relationships with siblings, but refused to apologize. 1 year later exactly, Ruthie returned to church, stood during testimony time. I want to apologize. 1 year ago I accused Mom of theft. I was wrong. Judge confirmed it, evidence proved it. I wasn't angry about money, I was angry about grief. Miss Dad blamed Mom for spending money that could have been my piece of him, but she spent it out of love, giving Dad more time, less pain. Mom, I'm sorry for accusing you, humiliating you, suing you. Can you forgive me? Hattie walked down aisle. You put me through hell, called me thief, sued me, tried to take my home. But you're my daughter and I've been praying for this. Yes, I forgive you. Mother and daughter EMBRACD. Congregation ERUPTD in celebration. Now at 68, Hattie has complete peace. Forgiven all 3 children, even Ruthie who took longest. Rebuilt relationships, still attending church, sitting in same pew. Truth won, justice PREVAILED, family RESTORED. This story proves that truth always prevails when you have courage to speak it. Court testimony under oath exposes lies. False accusations can be defeated with evidence. Forgiveness is possible, even after terrible betrayal. Family reconciliation takes time and genuine apology. Public humiliation can be overcome with truth. Testifying under oath is powerful and protected. Justice systems protect innocent people from false claims. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories. Smash that like button. Turn on a notification bell for new content. Drop a comment. Was Hattie right to forgive Ruthie? Should Ruthie have apologized sooner? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, South Africa, Australia, Trinidad, India, Philippines? Let me know. Remember, if you're falsely accused, document everything. Keep receipts, records, proof. Testify under oath if needed. Truth is protected in court. Don't let lies destroy your reputation. Stand up for yourself. Courts believe evidence over accusations. It's never too late to clear your name. Hattie's daughter Ruthie humiliated her at church, calling her a thief in front of 200 people. Next day, Hattie testified under oath in court with complete evidence proving she spent Vernon's money on his medical care, not on herself. Judge dismissed lawsuit, ordered kids to pay Hattie $8,600. $1 year later, Ruthie finally apologized publicly at church. Hattie forgave her. Family reconciled. Truth won. Thank you for following this powerful journey from public humiliation to court vindication to family reconciliation. Until the next story, stand in your truth, testify fearlessly under oath, and remember that evidence defeats lies every single time.